What if the very person you begged God to let you marry was the very one he had to protect you from? Think about that for a moment. You prayed, you cried, you planned a future, and yet the door closed. And in the silence of that rejection, you asked yourself, why could it be that what you thought was love was in fact desperation? Could it be that the one you were clinging to was not a blessing, but a burden that would have destroyed the very destiny God placed inside of you? Now let me ask you something deeper. Why do so many people struggle endlessly in relationships? Why do so many pour their energy into people who never had the capacity to love them back? Is it fate playing cruel games with us? Or is it that we are unwilling to confront our own lack of growth, our own fear of loneliness, our own refusal to wait until we are strong enough to carry the weight of real love? Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've sat in your room staring at your phone, waiting for a message that never came. You've scrolled through pictures of couples online, whispering to yourself, when will it be my turn? You've lowered your standards out of fear, thinking that if you don't settle now, you may never find anyone at all. That quiet H, that knowing question, am I unworthy? Am I unlovable? Has kept you stuck in cycles of heartbreak. But hear me clearly, waiting for the right person is not an excuse for passivity. It is not sitting on the sidelines hoping God drops someone into your lap. Waiting is preparation. Waiting is transformation. Waiting is the refining fire where God strengthens your character, matures your spirit, and teaches you to stand on your own 2 feet so that when love arrives, you don't cling to it out of desperation. You meet it with dignity, responsibility, and strength. So here is the challenge I lay before you tonight. Stop asking, when will God bring me the right person? And start asking, am I becoming the kind of person who is ready for the right relationship? Because here is the undeniable truth, and I want you to feel the weight of this. God will never allow you to marry someone who diminishes your destiny. He will only align you with someone who multiplies it. And if you don't believe me yet, stay with me. By the end of this message, you will not only understand why God didn't let you marry that person, you will thank him for it. You need to ask yourself something brutally honest. What if the reason your relationships fail isn't because God has abandoned you, but because you haven't yet become the kind of person who can sustain one? We romanticize love as though it's a miracle that just falls into our laps, when in reality it's one of the most demanding responsibilities a human being can take on. Marriage is not a fairy tale, it is a crucible. It doesn't just reveal who your partner is, it exposes who you are. So here's the question, why do so many people struggle endlessly with love? Why do they fall into cycles of heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment? Is it really fate, some cruel cosmic trick? Or is it something closer to home? Our refusal to grow up, to take responsibility, to confront our insecurities and our fears. If you look honestly, most of the suffering in relationships comes not from chance, but from character. I knew a man in his late 20s who spent years waiting for the right person to appear, doing absolutely nothing to prepare himself for such a responsibility. He lived passively, blaming God for his loneliness, resenting others for their happiness. Then, when someone finally did show interest, he clung desperately too desperately smothering her with insecurity and suspicion until she left. He thought he was unlucky. The truth, he wasn't unlucky. He was unprepared. His desperation was the fruit of years of neglecting his own growth. That is the truth people don't want to face. Desperation is self-destructive. It poisons attraction. People can sense when you are looking to be rescued instead of looking to build a partnership. A love does not grow in the soil of neediness. It grows in the soil of competence, of respect, of self-worth. If you cannot respect yourself, you cannot demand respect from someone else. If you cannot discipline your own life, you will suffocate the person you claim to love. And here is the shift you must make. Marriage is not a trophy you receive for showing up. It is not a prize God drops into your hands because you beg it hard enough. Marriage is the highest form of human partnership, and it requires extraordinary responsibility. It requires sacrifice. It requires strength. You have to earn the right to sustain it by becoming the kind of person who can actually carry its weight. So stop waiting, stop chasing, stop resenting, and instead become the man or woman who can stand alone without collapsing. Become the person whose life radiates enough strength, enough virtue, enough discipline that another soul would look at you and say, Wes, I can build with you, because here's the undeniable truth. And this is the point you cannot escape. God will not send you someone to fix your brokenness. He will send you someone who matches your wholeness. And if you're not willing to become whole, you will never hold on to love when it comes. Everyone wants to be loved, but very few want to do the hard work of becoming lovable. That's the brutal truth. We think attraction is about appearance or luck or some mystical chemistry beyond our control, but it isn't. Attraction is rooted in value, and value is built through discipline, competence, and the pursuit of virtue. If you are not willing to shoulder responsibility for your own life, you cannot expect anyone to entrust you with theirs. So let me ask you this. Why is it that so many people spend years chasing relationships, but so few spend the same energy building themselves? Why do we believe love is about being chosen when in reality it's about being worthy of being chosen? The evidence is clear. People who cultivate strength, who develop their character, who learn to carry the weight of life with integrity, they naturally draw others toward them, not because they're manipulative, not because they're desperate, but because value is magnetic. I once spoke with a young woman who was endlessly frustrated with her dating life. She was constantly chasing after men who ignored her or mistreated her. She blamed them. She blamed society. She even blamed God. But what she never confronted was her own lack of self-worth. She hadn't invested in her education. She hadn't developed her gifts. And she carried herself with an air of desperation. And what happened? She attracted people who preyed on her insecurity. The tragedy wasn't that she was unloved. It was that she didn't love herself enough to become someone worth loving. Here's the reality we all need to face. Desperation doesn't attract. It repels. It screams weakness. It tells the world that you are empty inside, waiting to be filled. And the people who will answer that signal are not the ones who will cherish you. They are the ones who will exploit you. Real attraction is not built on need. It is built on competence, on strength, on self-respect. It comes from knowing that even if no one ever chose you, Your life would still be meaningful, purposeful, and dignified. This is the mindset shift you must embrace. Marriage isn't some prize handed to you because you endured enough heartbreak or prayed long enough. It's not a consolation prize for loneliness. It is a sacred covenant, and it demands maturity, stability, and sacrifice. You don't just stumble into a marriage worth keeping. You build yourself into the kind of person who can sustain it. So here is my challenge. Stop obsessing over finding the right person. Stop chasing what runs away from you. Stop lowering your standards out of fear. Instead, devote yourself to becoming. Build your competence. Sharpen your mind. Strengthen your faith. Cultivate discipline, because when you become a person of undeniable value, love doesn't have to be chased. It comes knocking. And here's the drop moment. God will never send you someone to complete you. He will only send someone who complements the completeness you've already built. And if you can grasp that truth, it will change the way you pursue love for the rest of your life. We have this strange idea that waiting on God means doing nothing. Sitting back, scrolling through social media, watching time slip by, all while expecting Him to drop the perfect partner out of the sky. But that's not waiting. That's avoidance. That's passivity dressed up as spirituality. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Passivity is the silent killer of destiny. You cannot pray for a relationship of value while refusing to become a person of value. So let me ask you, why is it that so many people sit year after year complaining about loneliness, yet never take the responsibility to grow into the kind of partner they themselves desire? Why do they assume it's fate or God's delay, when in reality it's their unwillingness to change? The evidence is all around us. People enter relationships carrying unresolved trauma, financial instability, emotional chaos, and then wonder why those relationships collapse under the weight. It's not fate, it's neglect. I think of a man I once counseled. He was bitter, frustrated that God hadn't given him a wife yet. He said, I'm waiting on the Lord, but when you look closer, what was he actually doing? He was addicted to comfort, lacked ambition, and had no vision for his life. He wanted a woman to rescue him from his mediocrity. But God, in His mercy, withheld. Because here's the truth. If God had given him what he wanted, He would have destroyed it. The waiting wasn't punishment, it was protection. And this is the point most people miss. Desperation is not just unattractive, it's dangerous. When you're desperate, you ignore red flags, you cling to toxicity, and you trade your future for temporary comfort. Real attraction isn't born out of longing, it's born out of strength. It comes from competence, self-respect, and a clear sense of who you are and what you stand for. People are drawn to stability, to someone who knows their worth, not someone begging to be validated. So here is the mindset shift you must adopt. Marriage isn't a prize handed to you because you suffered long enough. It's not God's way of rewarding your loneliness. Marriage is a covenant, a partnership that demands maturity, sacrifice, and the ability to shoulder responsibility. You must be forged in the fire of preparation before you can carry its weight. That means disciplining your habits, healing your wounds, clarifying your vision, and building a life strong enough to hold someone else's heart. My challenge to you is this: stop confusing waiting with wasting. Stop waiting passively for love to find you and start preparing actively for the kind of love you claim to desire. Become a type of man or woman who doesn't just pray for a partner, but prepares to be one, because only then will you be aligned with the timing of God. And here is the mic drop truth that you cannot ignore. God's delay is never denial. It is demand for your growth, demand for your transformation, demand that you become the kind of person who can sustain what you're asking him for. Until you do, he will protect you from what you cannot yet carry. You have to wrestle with this reality. Sometimes the greatest act of love God shows you is in saying no. We think of rejection as failure, as if the door that closed was a punishment. But what if that very no was his way of saving your life? What if the heartbreak that nearly broke you was the only thing keeping you from being destroyed by a relationship that was never meant for you? So let me ask you, why is it that so many people interpret rejection as abandonment instead of protection? Why do they blame fate, or worse, blame God? Instead of asking the more difficult question, what in me wasn't ready? What in me still needed to grow? The truth is, relationships don't collapse simply because the wrong people meet. They collapse because the wrong versions of people meet. If you're unprepared, unhealed, unresolved, no amount of chemistry will save you. I think of a woman who begged God for years to marry a man who looked perfect on the outside. She prayed, she cried, she pleaded, but every time something blocked the union, she thought God was being cruel. Months later, she discovered that same man was deeply unfaithful, carrying addictions that would have poisoned her entire future. She realized that the delay, the unanswered prayer, wasn't cruelty at all. It was mercy. It was God saying, not this, not him, not now. And here's the hard-hitting truth. Desperation blinds you to reality. When you're desperate, you'll call dysfunction destiny. You'll baptize chaos and call it chemistry. You'll ignore the warning signs and then blame heaven when it falls apart. But attraction that matters isn't built on neediness. It's built on competence, on dignity, on strength. People of value attract value. People who know their worth are far less likely to sell themselves short. That is the mindset shift you have to make. Marriage is not a medal for loneliness endured. It is not a divine consolation prize because you waited long enough. It is a covenant, a weighty, sacred responsibility that requires you to be ready. And readiness is not a passive state. It demands healing. It demands discipline. It demands you bring your best self to the table, not your broken self, hoping someone else will fix it. So here's my challenge. Stop mourning the ones God blocked and start preparing for the one he's aligning. Stop chasing validation in the wrong places and start cultivating strength in the right ones. Stop seeing his no as rejection and start seeing it as redirection, because when the time comes, you won't just stumble into the right relationship. You'll be ready to build it, sustain it, and protect it. And here's the mic drop truth. You cannot escape it. Protection is not rejection, it's preparation. And if you learn to see it that way, every no becomes proof that he's guiding you toward a greater eyes.